Hey guys, so yesterday I told y'all that I was going to read live, but I've decided to go ahead and record me reading right now. I'm actually taking a writing course and I have a lot of homework and stuff I've got to do tomorrow and then get ready to go out of town. So I've decided to go ahead and read today and post this if I can tomorrow. So you'll either be seeing this video on Thursday, or if I can't wait and post it later, you might see it later tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and read chapter 10 of Danger in the Darkest Hour. And remember, the last thing that we read was that they heard someone singing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star in the cave. So let's see who that might be. All right, chapter 10, Hideout. "What's going on?" Jack whispered. "Let's find out," said Annie. Jack turned off the flashlight. The sound of the singing guided them as they tiptoed through the downward sloping tunnel and into a giant cavern. Across the cavern, candles flickered in a corner. The candlelight shone on a group of small children sitting with a teenage girl. Most of the children were no more than 3 or 4 years old. They sat on a pile of blankets facing the girl as she sang with them. "Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky." The children's bell-like voices were beautiful, Jack thought. "When the blazing sun is gone, when it nothing shines upon, then you show your little light, twinkle, twinkle all the night." Jack and Annie waited until the children had finished their song. Then Annie called, "Kathleen!" All the children turned to look. Kathleen let out a cry and hurried across the cavern into Annie's arms. Then she grabbed Jack and hugged him tightly too. The enchantress wiped tears from her sea blue eyes. Her long curly hair was tangled and dirty. She looked tired and thin. "I am so glad to see you." "But what are you doing here?" she said. "Where is Teddy?" "Teddy sent us instead," Jack said, "because he thought we could decode your message. Plus, he had to save downed airmen in Holland and Belgium," said Annie. "What happened to you? Who are these little kids?" By now the children were tugging on Jack's and Annie's overalls, chattering, "Hello, who are you? What's your name?" They wore ragged clothes and no shoes, but their small, pale faces were open and trusting. "Are you taking care of all these kids?" Annie asked Kathleen. "Yes, I have 2 wonderful helpers, Sarah and her sister Sophie," said Kathleen. She pointed to the tallest children in the group. The sisters looked to be about 6 and 7 years old, their dark eyes shining. They smiled shyly at Jack and Annie. "These are my friends, Jack and Annie," Kathleen said to the children. "They have come a very long way to help us." Jack and Annie. "Meet Solly, Eddie, Daniel, Eli." Kathleen pointed to each tiny child as she said the names: Pierre, Leo, Marcella, and Ella. Talking over her, the children asked questions all at once. "Who are you? Can you stay with us? Where do you live?" "Children, children," Kathleen said in a calm voice. "Hush, please. Go back to your blankets now with Sophie and Sarah and rest. You can play with Jack and Annie after you awake." The children did as Kathleen asked. Still chattering, though more softly, they followed the older girls back to their blankets. Sophie and Sarah seemed very grown up as they tried to settle the younger children down. "Have you all been living in this cave a long time?" asked Annie. "This is our hideout during the day," said Kathleen. "After dark, I sneak them into the empty chateau and we hide in the attic there. The plumbing still works and there is fresh well water. I found a supply of candles, thank goodness. Sophie and Sarah are very capable. They watch the others at night while I look for food. I visit gardens and gather old bread from behind the bakery. Before daylight, I leave the children back here. We sing and play games and nap and talk. I don't think they realize that we are in hiding." "Why do you have to hide them?" asked Jack. to keep them safe from the Nazis, said Kathleen. My assignment with the SOE was to find Sophie and Sarah in a Normandy orphanage and sneak them into England. Their parents had escaped prison and already made their own way to London. Why were their mom and dad in prison? Annie asked. Their parents are brilliant scientists. They were both arrested in Paris by the Nazis because they are Jewish, said Kathleen. That's crazy, said Annie. Yeah, said Jack. Yes, it is, said Kathleen. When I arrived in Normandy, I found that the orphanage had been abandoned, but there were still children there. Sophie and Sarah were taking care of them as best they could. Because all the children were Jewish, I needed to hide them. Oh, man, said Jack. He couldn't understand why the Nazis hated Jewish people so much. He'd read about it and seen movies about it, but he never understood it. There are too many for me to get them all to safety, said Kathleen. That is why I sent word to Teddy that I needed magic. I wanted something to make us invisible or something to help us fly. If only I could turn them into little birds, I thought. They could fly across the channel and then become themselves again. Right, said Annie, smiling. Like when you once turned us into seals off the coast of Ireland. Exactly like that, said Kathleen. Well, why do you need magic from Teddy? Asked Jack. What happened to your own magic powers? I do not know, Kathleen shook her head. I seem to have lost part of myself here. I fear that sadness and worry have drained me of my ability to perform magic. Perhaps being terrified for the children. She shook her head again. But you have brought help, yes? The wand? Jack took a deep breath. Actually, no, we didn't, he answered. No magic, only ourselves. Kathleen looked confused. But in my message, I know, said Annie. Teddy meant to give us the wand of Dianthus, but he forgot. He was flying the plane and helping us learn how to parachute, and somehow he forgot, and we forgot too. I remember just as we were about to jump out of the plane, said Jack, but then it was too late. He forgot? I cannot believe it. How could he? Kathleen's voice trembled. Oh, that is terrible. Only magic can help these children escape harm. We cannot leave France now. We are trapped. You have to leave, said Jack. We all have to leave France by nightfall. A giant military invasion is starting tomorrow. It's called the D-Day invasion. We heard that bombs will be dropped over this whole area. Kathleen shook her head. No, I don't know how we can leave. No, it is not possible, she stammered. Jack couldn't believe how much Kathleen had changed, from a joyful, confident person to someone much more worried and fragile. He found his own confidence starting to fail. I don't know what to do, he said, looking at Annie. Well, said Annie, I know what to do. We're going to get all these kids and ourselves out of France by nightfall. We have skills. What skills? Said Jack. Skills, you know, you said so yourself. Remember in the ditch? Said Annie. Jack couldn't think of a single skill that would help their situation. Don't worry, Annie said. We have courage, we have hope, and we have each other. So let's make a plan. I love that Annie. She's such a trooper. Jack just stared at her. Annie went on. First of all, she said, with all these kids, we won't be able to fit into Teddy's little plane. She turned to Kathleen. We already sent a message to Teddy telling him to pick us up at nightfall at the same spot where he dropped us off. So now we just need to send a message telling him to bring a bigger plane. Sylvie at the bistro can do that, said Jack. Annie's confidence was lifting his spirits. Good idea, said Annie. Next, we have to figure out how to get from here back to the drop zone. That's the hard part, said Jack. We need a truck or something, like the milk truck that took us to Kane. Right, said Annie, so the kids could hide in the back. Kathleen's face lit up. Oh, every night I go to the bakery up the street after it closes, she said. There's always a delivery truck parked in the driveway. It is never locked. I know this because I gather scraps of stale bread from the back. Okay, said Jack, but there's only one problem. If we borrow that truck, who's going to drive it? You silly, said Annie. Me, said Jack. Yes, you. Annie turned to Kathleen. Jack's not old enough to have a license, but he learned how to drive an old truck on our great-grandfather's farm. He's only allowed to drive around the pastures, but he's a good driver. That's one of his skills. No, said Jack. Yes, said Annie. So all we have to do is gather the kids, use the truck to get them to the drop zone, wait for Teddy to show up with a bigger plane, get everybody on board, and we're all out of here by nightfall. Fantastic, said Kathleen. We have a plan. Woo! All right. So now we're to chapter 11. Wonder if the plan's going to work. Let's see. Chapter 11 is actually, the title of chapter 11 is actually The Plan. So I sure hope it's going to work. Kathleen's sea blue eyes were sparkling. I will go tell Sophie and Sarah to get the children ready. She hurried across the cavern. Jack whirled around to Annie. No, 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 he whispered. This is not a good plan. It is. You drove great-granddad's truck perfectly just a few weeks ago, said Annie. I was there. I wanted to drive it too, but I couldn't reach the pedals. But that, said Jack. You didn't even need a key with that old truck, said Annie. Remember? You just turned the starter switch. You learned how to use the clutch and the gear shift. You drove us around the field for hours, around and around and around. You always say you can't wait to drive that truck again. But this is so different, said Jack. It's not that different, Annie said. Are you crazy? It's totally different, said Jack. Stealing a truck, loading it with tiny kids, and driving through a foreign country to try to escape Nazis in World War II is totally different from driving in a circle in our great-grandfather's pasture. Okay, it's different, said Annie. Thank you, said Jack. It's different because there are lives at stake here, said Annie, and that's why you have to do it. Before Jack could say anything, Kathleen came rushing back. She was holding a candle and a folded map. What was the location of your drop zone? She asked. It's a field in Beeville, next to a church, said Annie, 6 miles northwest of Kane. Good, said Kathleen. I have the Normandy map that the SOE gave me. It will help us. Let's go get the truck. By the light of her candle, she led the way out of the cavern and through the limestone tunnel. Jack's heart was racing. Annie was right. Lives were at stake, but he was already sweating. And they hadn't even started the plan yet. How would he feel when he was trying to sneak a truckload of Jewish orphans past Nazi soldiers? Jack and Annie followed Kathleen through the tunnel to the crack in the rock. Then they walked into the gray light of the late afternoon. The wind blew softly over the grounds of the chateau as they headed down the driveway. Let's refine our plans, said Kathleen. She sounded more like her old self. Sophie and Sarah will get the children ready. Annie will go to Sylvie at the bistro and ask her to send a new message to Teddy. Jack and I will pick up the bakery truck. Then we will all meet back here, load up the children, and head for the drop zone. Got it, said Annie. Jack nodded. He was relieved that Kathleen seemed so much stronger. He hoped it meant her magic skills would soon return. Right now, he thought they really needed a little magic. When they came to the road, Kathleen turned to Annie. You should go ahead of us, Sylvie, she said, so we will not look as if we're traveling in a group. The Nazis do not like groups. Okay, meet you guys back here, said Annie. Good luck. She started walking up the road of rocks towards Sylvie's bistro. Jack took a deep breath as he and Kathleen stood together, waiting for Annie to get a good distance away. He always felt shy when he was alone with a beautiful enchantress. Jack, these have been the 2 worst weeks of my life, Kathleen said, breaking the silence. I knew it was possible I could be responsible for the loss of 10 children. I felt helpless and sad and angry all at once. I've never felt that way before. You're not helpless, Kathleen, said Jack. You're strong and you're good. That's why you were sad and angry. Thank you, Jack, she said. I am very, very relieved you and Annie came to help. We haven't really done anything yet, said Jack. But you will, she said. I admire you very much. She looked up the road of rocks. Annie is far enough ahead, I think. We can go now. Jack straightened his shoulders as he and Kathleen walked together up the road. He was ready to drive the truck. In fact, he was ready to do anything to be worthy of Kathleen's admiration. The bakery was closed when they got there. No one was on the sidewalk. The delivery truck should be in the back, said Kathleen. Come with me. She and Jack slipped behind the building. An old-fashioned cream-colored truck was parked behind the bakery. The cab of the truck looked just like the cab of Jack's great-grandfather's truck. The back was different, though. His great-grandfather's truck was a pickup, but the back of this truck was a box shaped like a van. The words La Baguette were painted on the side. Jack looked at the bakery truck. He took a deep breath. Okay, this should work, he said, trying to sound calm. Let's see how she looks inside. He pulled on the handle of the cab and the door swung open. Jack stuck his head inside and saw that the truck had a keyless starter switch, just like his great-grandfather's truck. He turned back to Kathleen. We're in business, he said. Wonderful, Kathleen said. Do you have a piece of paper so I can leave a note for the baker? Jack reached into his pack and gave Kathleen his notebook and a pencil. She wrote on a blank page, Thank you for letting us borrow your truck. It is waiting for you near the church in Beeville. She tore the paper out of Jack's notebook, folded it, and slid it under the back door of the bakery. Then they both climbed into the front seat. Good to go? Jack asked. Yes, she said, smiling. Good to go. Jack looked at the floor and found the clutch pedal on the left, the brake in the middle, and the gas pedal on the right, just like his great-grandfather's truck. He put his hand on the gear shift next to his seat. Everything felt familiar. Okie dokie, he said. Let's get this show on the road. Jack pressed the brake with his right foot and then pushed the clutch pedal down with his left. He moved the gear shift into neutral. Then he turned the starter switch and the engine rumbled to life. Jack shifted into first gear. He moved his right foot off the brake and pressed the gas pedal. The truck engine roared. Jack took his foot off the clutch. The truck jerked forward and the engine stopped dead. No problem, said Jack. It'll just take me a minute to get the hang of it again. Jack repeated everything he had done. Brake, clutch, gear shift into neutral, starter, gear shift into first. This time, he operated the clutch and gas pedals perfectly, and the bakery truck moved smoothly onto the road of rocks. Brilliant, said Kathleen. We are on our way. As Jack headed up the street, he kept all his attention on his driving, not daring to think of their plan. Instead, he imagined he was just driving around his great-grandfather's pasture. When the truck came to the old chateau, Annie was heading into the driveway. Seeing Jack behind the wheel, she raised her arms skyward and jumped up and down as if she just crossed a finish line. Jack and Kathleen laughed as Annie ran alongside the truck, waving her arms. Jack brought the bakery truck to a stop near the hillside. Then he and Kathleen climbed out. You did it, Annie said to Jack. He shrugged as if it was no big deal. Wait here, I'll get the children, said Kathleen. Sophie and Sarah should have them ready by now. She dashed to the rocks. Was it hard to drive? Annie asked Jack. Not once I got it going, he said. It all kind of came back to me. Did you give the message to Sylvie? Yes, I snuck around the back of the bistro and tapped on the window again, said Annie. I asked her to send another message, one that said, Unicorn has 10 colts, need bigger bird. Good work, said Jack. Here they come, said Annie. Kathleen, Sophie, and Sarah led the small children out of the tunnel. Excited to go for a ride, the little kids raced across the grass to the bakery truck. Jack got out and swung open the rear door. Then he, Annie, and Kathleen lifted each child into the back. Is everyone here? Called Kathleen. She called out all their names to make sure. Ella, Ellie, Leo, Daniel. Okay, so here's a picture. The caption says, seeing Jack behind the wheel, she raised her arms skyward and jumped up and down as if he'd just crossed a finish line. Here's a picture. There's Jack and Kathleen in the truck, and there's Annie. And there's the old chateau. That's a French word for big old house. As each high voice rang out, "Yes!" Jack climbed into the driver's seat. Soon Kathleen and Annie joined them. Jack could hear the children chattering behind the partition that separated the cab from the back. "They are so excited," said Kathleen. "Excuse me, it smells like bread back there," said Annie. The children found lots of old crusts to eat. "Really?" said Jack. He couldn't hear their voices saying. "This is good. I love it. It's hard to chew, yes, but it's very good." Jack's throat tightened. He wanted only one thing in the world right now, to help these little kids escape from France. All right, so now we are going to read chapter 12. Let me look back here real quick. Yeah, so we started with 10, 11, and this will be the last one for today. So chapter 12 is called Checkpoint. I don't know if you know what checkpoint means, but it might not be good. So cross your fingers. We'll see. Kathleen opened the map of the Cane area and showed it to Annie. "Mondenville," Annie said, pointing, "and Beeville. It looks like we have about 7 miles to go." "All set," said Jack. He took a deep breath. He started the truck, shifted into gear, then drove down the driveway toward the road. "Turn right," said Kathleen, studying the map. Jack turned right. He drove faster and shifted gears as they moved up the quiet road of rocks. Left onto Calmetta Street, said Kathleen. "Then right onto Cloppy." These are weird words, but there's another country. Jack followed her directions. "Right onto Coburg," said Annie. "Then a quick left." Jack turned onto Coburg, then made a quick left and landed in the middle of a traffic jam. "Oh no," Kathleen said quietly. Up the road, Nazi soldiers were stopping traffic. 2 of the Nazis held up spotlights as vehicles crawled toward them. "What's going on?" asked Annie. "It's a checkpoint," said Kathleen. Jack stopped breathing. "What does that mean?" he asked. "It means officials randomly stop vehicles and check identities," said Kathleen. The soldiers waved one car through, but they stopped the next. Traffic came to a halt as a Nazi official shined a flashlight into the car that had stopped. "Oh, man," said Jack. When he saw another Nazi inspect the car's trunk, he started to panic. He was terrified that the soldiers would stop them, too, and look in the back of the bakery truck. "Tell the kids to be quiet," Jack said. Kathleen tapped on the partition. "Quiet, please, children. You must be very quiet now. Not one word." The children were silent. Jack gripped the steering wheel to try to stop his hands from shaking. "Jack, you have to look calm," said Kathleen. "You must look as if you drive this truck every day to deliver bread." "Yeah, like it's no big deal," said Annie. I don't think I can," Jack said in a strangled voice. "You have to," said Annie. Wait a moment," said Kathleen. She closed her eyes and opened them. "Oh my! What is it?" asked Jack. "I just recalled a spell that will keep us safe," she said. "Really?" said Jack. "Yes. Since being with you and Annie, I have grown more hopeful. I think that feeling of hope is bringing back some of my magic," said Kathleen. "That's wonderful," said Annie. "What's the spell you remember?" "It is a spell to make us invisible," said Kathleen. "Really?" said Jack. "Yes, drive on, Jack," said Kathleen. The cars had started moving again. "Do not look to either side. Stare straight ahead." As Jack shifted from neutral into first gear and then second, Kathleen closed her eyes and whispered a rhyme. "Powers of goodness, powers of light, shield us now from powers of sight." When Kathleen started to repeat the rhyme, Annie closed her eyes and joined in. "Powers of goodness, powers of light, shield us now from powers of sight." Holding his breath and staring straight ahead, Jack drove toward the checkpoint. Powers of goodness, powers of light, shield us now from the powers of sight. Kathleen opened her eyes and looked around. It worked, she whispered. We are invisible. We are? Said Jack. How do you know? The Nazis are completely ignoring us, said Kathleen. They see nothing but empty space between the car in front of us and the car behind us. When it is our turn to pass the checkpoint, be calm and drive straight through. Jack relaxed a little as he imagined being invisible. Kathleen whispered the magic spell again. Powers of goodness, powers of light, shield us now from powers of sight. The soldiers waved at the driver of the green car ahead of the bakery truck, giving permission for it to move on. Good, said Kathleen. Now just follow closely behind that car and we will be fine. Jack fixed his eyes on the back of the green car. Following it, he drove steadily and calmly past the checkpoint. When he glanced in the rearview mirror, he saw that the soldiers were paying no attention at all to the bakery truck. He had no doubt now that Kathleen's magic was working. They were definitely invisible. Drive on, Jack, said Kathleen. Jack drove on. When he looked in his rearview mirror again, he saw the soldiers stopping the car behind them. We made it, said Annie. Yes, said Kathleen, looking at the map. Turn left here, Jack. Then an immediate right and follow the sign to St. Clair. Jack did as Kathleen said. He turned left, then he turned right and pressed harder on the gas pedal. The road ahead was empty. He drove faster and faster, shifting into third gear. In the fading light of dusk, the truck glided along the smooth road. Yay, said Annie. I think we're going to make it by nightfall. Jack said nothing. He was afraid to break the spell of invisibility. When you see a sign for Beeville, turn right, said Kathleen. Jack nodded and kept driving. Beeville, said Annie. Jack turned right. Church, said Annie. The white steeple of the church was rising into the darkening sky. Next to the church was the drop zone, the empty field where they had landed with their parachutes. That's where Teddy will pick us up, said Annie. Good, drive to the back of the church, said Kathleen, so the truck cannot be seen. How can the truck be seen from anywhere? Jack wondered. Has Kathleen undone her spell? He pulled off the road and bumped over the grass to the back of the church. When he brought the truck to a stop and switched off the engine, Kathleen and Annie clapped. We're here, we made it, said Annie. You were brilliant, Jack, said Kathleen. Oh no, you get the credit, he said. I could never have done it without your magic. Yes, you could have, said Kathleen. In fact, you did. What? Said Jack. Jack, I fear I did not tell you the truth, said Kathleen. I still do not have magic powers. I did not make us invisible with a spell. You didn't? Said Annie. No, said Kathleen. I knew that as long as Jack felt confident, an ordinary baking truck would not draw the attention of the Nazis. I felt sure we could slip safely by. Oh, brother, said Jack. He took a deep breath. He didn't know whether to be angry with Kathleen or amazed at himself. In his confusion, he just laughed. Annie and Kathleen joined in. Well, at least the scariest part of the journey is over, Jack thought. Kathleen, Jack, and Annie climbed out of the cab. The countryside was quiet. No vehicles were in sight, and no dogs were barking. The moon was on the horizon. I hope Teddy received the message from Gaston and Sylvie, said Jack, or else we'll all be stranded here during the D-Day invasion. Tell me, what is the D-Day invasion? Asked Kathleen. Sometime after midnight, more than 100,000 Allied soldiers will invade by sea and air to drive the Nazis out of France, said Jack. It will be the beginning of the end of the World War II. That is good, very good, breathed Kathleen. All the world is living a great nightmare now. When it wakes, everyone will wonder how this could have happened, and I fear no one will know the answer. She shook her head. Well, what should we do now? I think maybe we should do a better job of hiding the truck, said Jack, looking around. You and I can move it down the road, said Annie. While you do that, I will hide the children in the church, said Kathleen. Good plan, said Jack. We'll help you get them inside. Kathleen, Jack, and Annie walked to the rear of the truck. When Kathleen opened the door, they found the children sprawled all over the back, fast asleep. Even Sophie and Sarah had closed their eyes. "Wake up, birdies," Kathleen sang softly. "Wake up." Her sweet voice roused the children from sleep. As they began to stir, some reached out and put their arms around Jack, Annie, and Kathleen. Jack gently lifted Leo and Ellie out of the back of the truck. Then he clutched their hands and walked with them across the grass. "Let's go inside this nice building," he said. "It's peaceful in there." "Is this our new house?" Leo asked, rubbing his eyes. "Can you live here with us?" said Ellie. Jack led his 2 sleepy 3-year-olds into the church, while Annie, Kathleen, Sophie, and Sarah shepherded the others after him. Inside the dark front entrance, the air smelled of old wood and incense. The last night of day shone through stained glass windows. After Jack, Annie, and Kathleen got everyone settled in the front pew, Kathleen started to lead the children in song. "Let's move the truck now," Jack said to Annie. She nodded. As they slipped down the aisle and out of the church, they heard, "Are you sleeping? Are you sleeping, Brother John? Brother John? Morning bells are ringing, morning bells are ringing, ding dong ding, ding dong ding." And that's the end of chapter 12. All right, my goodness gracious, they were able to get past the checkpoint. Just know a checkpoint is a place where usually they're trying to look for bad people, and in that case they were looking for Jewish people who were not bad people. And Jack and Annie and Kathleen were able to get them past and to safety. So that was so exciting. All right, so Monday, we will read chapter 13 and 14, the last 2 chapters of the book. And again, just like I told y'all the last time we read, make sure and learn a little bit more about World War II history by going to the very back of the book, page 173, and reading just about 12 pages. Tells you all about other things that happened and other people that were significant and very important during this time of the World War II. So I hope you enjoyed it, and make sure and comment below. Let me know that you were here reading with me and what was your favorite part. And again, I'll be choosing a new book after we get through with this one. So let me know if there's anything that you love, maybe a series or a picture book even, or some chapter books. And we'll make sure and read as many books as we can this summer. I'm so glad you joined me today, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you Monday. Let's say 4:30 again on Monday, okay? And that way, hopefully I can get back in time and we can read live on Monday. All right, y'all take care. Bye.